The morning I woke up to find a certified letter from the Ridgemont Pines Homeowners Association tucked into my storm door. I knew my day was about to go sideways. I pulled it out with numb fingers, the January cold biting through my thermal shirt as snow crunched under my slippers. The envelope had that official weight to it, the kind that makes your stomach drop before you even break the seal. Inside was a violation notice with my address printed in bold letters at the top. Below that, in meticulously typed paragraphs, the HOA informed me that I was being fined $300 for excessive snow accumulation on outdoor recreational equipment and failure to maintain aesthetic standards during winter months. I read it twice, then a third time, trying to make sense of what they were talking about. Then I looked up at my backyard and saw my kids' trampoline, currently buried under about 8 inches of pristine white snow from last night's storm. They were fining me for snow on my trampoline. I stood there in my driveway in Ridgemont, Colorado, reading and rereading the letter like it might change if I stared at it long enough. We had moved here 6 months ago, and I thought I had escaped the worst of HOA nonsense by choosing what seemed like a reasonable neighborhood. The covenants had looked standard when my wife and I reviewed them before buying. No crazy paint color restrictions, no rules about what kind of mailbox you could have, nothing that screamed power-hungry board members with too much time on their hands. But apparently, I had missed the section about snow-covered trampolines being an eyesore. My phone buzzed in my pocket. It was a text from my wife, Nina Jenkins, who was currently 3 states away visiting her sister in Ohio for the week. She had sent a photo of her niece's art project with a happy face emoji. I decided not to ruin her morning by telling her about the fine just yet. Dad, come look." My 8-year-old son Lucas came running to the back door, his face pressed against the glass. "The trampoline is so cool." I walked inside, grateful for the warmth, and headed to the kitchen window that overlooked our backyard. Lucas and his 10-year-old sister Emma were already bundled up in their snow gear, staring at the trampoline like it was Christmas morning all over again. The black jumping surface was completely hidden under a thick blanket of snow, creating this perfect mound of white that honestly did look pretty appealing if you were a kid. "Can we jump on it?" Emma asked, her breath fogging up the window. "Please, please, please." I hesitated. The HOA letter was still clutched in my hand, and my first instinct was to go out there and sweep all the snow off immediately to avoid further violations. But then, I looked at my kids' faces, bright with excitement, and something rebellious stirred in my chest. Why should I rush out to clear snow off a trampoline that was in my own backyard? It was not like the thing was visible from the street. Our property backed up to a common area with trees, and the only way anyone could see our backyard was if they deliberately walked around to look. "Let me check it out first," I said, grabbing my coat. Outside, I brushed some snow off the safety net and inspected the frame. Everything looked solid. The snow was the light, fluffy kind, not the heavy, wet stuff that could damage anything. I bounced on the edge experimentally, and the trampoline seemed fine under the weight. "Okay," I called out, "but one at a time and be careful." Emma went first because she pulled the older sibling card. She climbed up, and I watched as she took a tentative bounce. The snow shifted and puffed up around her feet like a cloud. Her second jump was more confident, and snow exploded into the air, sparkling in the morning sunlight. By her third jump, she was laughing so hard she could barely stay upright. "This is amazing," she shrieked, bouncing higher. With each jump, more snow flew up and around her, creating this swirling vortex of white. It looked like she was jumping inside a snow globe. Lucas was next, and his lighter weight made the snow react differently. He seemed to bounce even higher. the layer of snow adding this weird cushioning effect that changed the physics of the jumps. He discovered that if he landed on his butt, he could create a massive snow explosion that coated him from head to toe. I stood there watching them, the HOA letter growing damp in my coat pocket, and made a decision. They could fine me all they wanted, but my kids were having the time of their lives, and I was not about to end that just because some busybody on the HOA board had decided that snow on a trampoline was somehow offensive. The kids jumped for over an hour, taking turns and occasionally breaking the one-at-a-time rule when they thought I was not watching closely enough. By the time they came inside for hot chocolate, they were soaked, exhausted, and happier than I had seen them in weeks. The trampoline now had a packed-down center where they had been jumping, surrounded by snow that had been kicked to the edges. I waited until they were settled in front of the TV with their drinks before I called the HOA office. A cheerful recorded message informed me that the office was closed on Sundays, but I could leave a voicemail or send an email. I chose email, figuring I would need a paper trail. "Dear Ridgemont Pines HOA Board," I typed. "I received your violation notice this morning regarding snow on my trampoline. I would like to respectfully dispute this fine. The trampoline is located in my backyard and is not visible from any public street or walkway. Additionally, the snow accumulated naturally during last night's storm, and I see no reason why I should be required to remove natural snow accumulation from recreational equipment. Please reconsider this fine. Sincerely, Oliver Morrison." I hit send and immediately felt better. I had been polite, reasonable, and clear. Surely they would see that this was ridiculous and drop it. Monday morning arrived with another 4 inches of snow. The kids were beside themselves with joy because the trampoline now had an even thicker layer, and they spent an hour before school jumping and creating what Emma called snow tornadoes. I shoveled the driveway and walkway, salted the steps, and generally did all the normal winter maintenance that any responsible homeowner would do. I left the trampoline alone. At work, I mentioned the situation to my coworker Dennis during lunch. He nearly spit out his coffee. "Wait, they fine you for snow," he shook his head. "Man, I am so glad I bought a place outside city limits. No HOA nonsense for me." "I thought this one was reasonable," I said. "The rules seemed pretty standard when we moved in." "They always do at first," Dennis said darkly. "Then somebody gets elected to the board who has nothing better to do than drive around looking for violations. It is like giving someone a tiny bit of power and watching it corrupt them absolutely." I laughed, but his words stuck with me. When I got home that evening, there was another letter from the HOA. This one informed me that since I had not corrected the violation, I was now being fined an additional $50 per day until the issue was resolved. I did the math quickly in my head. At that rate, I would owe them $650 by the end of the week. I called Nina that night and filled her in on everything. There was a long pause on the other end of the line. "Let me get this straight," she said finally. "They want you to clear snow off the trampoline." "Apparently, the trampoline that is in our backyard." "Yep, the backyard that is not visible from the street. That's the one." She was quiet for another moment, and I could practically hear her thinking. Nina was the more diplomatic one in our relationship, the one who smoothed things over and found compromises. I expected her to suggest I just clear the snow and fight the fine through proper channels. "Screw them," she said instead, and I nearly dropped my phone. "That's absolutely ridiculous. Those kids have been cooped up inside because of the cold, and they finally found something fun to do outside. Do not clear that trampoline." I loved my wife very much in that moment. The next morning, Tuesday, I was backing out of my driveway to take the kids to school when a white sedan pulled up and blocked me in. A woman in her mid-50s emerged, wearing a puffy coat and carrying a clipboard. Her hair was styled in that particular way that screamed, "I need to speak to a manager," and her expression was already set to disapprove. "Oliver Morrison," she called out. I rolled down my window. "That's me. I'm Sharon Fletcher, head of the Ridgemont Pines HOA board. I need to speak with you about your ongoing violations." Emma and Lucas were in the back seat, watching with wide eyes. I kept my voice level. "I sent an email disputing the fine. I have not received a response yet." "Your dispute was reviewed and denied," Sharon said crisply. "The covenants are very clear. All outdoor equipment must be maintained in good condition and kept visually appealing. A snow-covered trampoline is neither." "It snowed," I said. "Snow covers things when it snows. That's what snow does." "Other homeowners manage to keep their yards neat even in winter," Sharon countered. "Your neighbors have complained." I glanced around. Our house was at the end of a cul-de-sac, with only 2 neighbors within any kind of viewing distance, and they were both on the sides of our property, not behind it. "Which neighbors? The trampoline is not even visible from their houses." Sharon's lips pressed into a thin line. "That's not the point. The point is that you're in violation of the covenants you agreed to when you purchased this property. Now, I'm giving you until end of business today to clear that trampoline, or the fines will continue to accrue." "Dad," Lucas whispered from the back. "We're going to be late for school." "I have to go," I told Sharon, "but I'll be responding to the HOA in writing." Again. She stepped aside, but not before shooting me a look that suggested this was far from over. At school drop-off, Emma turned to me before getting out of the car. "Is that lady trying to stop us from jumping on the trampoline?" "She's just being difficult," I said. "Do not worry about it," but I was worried. $650 by the end of the week was no joke, and if they kept adding $50 a day indefinitely, we would be looking at serious money. I spent my lunch break researching Colorado HOA laws and was dismayed to find that HOAs had fairly broad authority to enforce their covenants. However, I also found that fines had to be reasonable and related to actual damage or violations. A lawyer's consultation page suggested that fines for aesthetic issues were often challengeable if they were excessive, or if the violation was temporary and weather-related. I drafted another email to the HOA, this time citing the specific Colorado statutes I had found and arguing that fines for natural snow accumulation were unreasonable. I also requested copies of any complaints from neighbors, as I suspected Sharon was exaggerating or outright lying about that. Wednesday brought more snow. At this point, the trampoline looked like an igloo. The kids could barely climb onto it because the snow was so deep, but that just made it more exciting for them. They spent the afternoon after school building a tunnel through the snow on the trampoline, turning it into a winter fort. Their laughter echoed across the backyard, and several neighborhood kids came over to ask if they could play too. I said yes, because why not? If the HOA was going to fine me anyway, we might as well make it worth it. Our backyard became the gathering spot for kids on our block, all of them taking turns jumping on the snow-covered trampoline and shrieking with joy. One of the mothers who came to pick up her son stopped to thank me. "Marcus has been talking about your trampoline nonstop," she said. "It is all he wanted to do today. This is great." "Glad he is having fun," I said. Though apparently the HOA disagrees. Her smile faded. "Oh no, did Sharon come after you?" "She lives 3 streets over from us, and she made our neighbors remove a bird feeder last year because she said it attracted too many birds." "Too many birds?" in a neighborhood surrounded by trees. I felt a little better knowing I was not the only target of Sharon's crusade, but it did not solve my immediate problem. That evening, I found another letter on my door. This one informed me that my total fines now stood at $500, and if the violation was not corrected by Friday, the HOA would be seeking legal action to place a lien on my property. A lien over snow on a trampoline. I called Nina again, and this time she was furious. They can do that. They can put a lien on our house. Technically, if the fines get high enough and we do not pay them, yes, I said, but it would not get that far. I think she is just trying to scare me. It is working, Nina admitted, but I still think she is being completely unreasonable. Is there anyone else on the board you can talk to? That was actually a good idea. The HOA board had 5 members, and Sharon was just one of them, even if she was the president. I pulled up the Ridgemont Pines HOA website and found the names and emails of the other board members. Richard Hoffman, vice president; Patricia Chen, treasurer; Miguel Santos, secretary; and Karen Whitmore, member at large. Of course, there was a Karen. I sent a carefully worded email to all 4 of them, explaining the situation and asking if there was any way to resolve this reasonably. I attached photos showing that the trampoline was not visible from the street, and explained that my children and their friends had been enjoying the snow-covered trampoline immensely. I suggested that this was a case where the letter of the law was being enforced without consideration for common sense or community well-being. Thursday morning, I actually received a response. It was from Miguel Santos, the secretary. His email was brief but sympathetic. "Oliver, I hear you, and honestly, this seems excessive to me too. Unfortunately, Sharon has been very insistent, and she is citing the maintenance clause of the covenants. I am going to bring this up at our next board meeting on the 15th. In the meantime, I would suggest you consider just clearing the trampoline to stop the fines from accumulating further. I know it seems stupid, but Sharon will not let this go." The 15th was still over a week away. At $50 a day, I would be looking at over $1,000 in fines by then. But the idea of clearing the trampoline felt like surrendering to the most petty kind of tyranny. I sat at my kitchen table, drinking coffee and staring out at the backyard where the trampoline sat like a small snow-covered mountain, and tried to figure out what to do. The answer came from an unexpected source. When I picked the kids up from school that afternoon, Emma handed me a piece of paper. "My teacher said to give this to you." It was a note from Mrs. Patterson, Emma's 4th-grade teacher. "Mr. Morrison, Emma has been telling the class about the snow trampoline, and it inspired our science lesson this week on physics and momentum. Would it be possible for me to bring my son over sometime to try it? Also, if you are dealing with HOA issues, my husband is a real estate attorney. Let me know if you need any help." I texted the number she had written at the bottom of the note, and within an hour I was on the phone with her husband, James Patterson. He listened to the whole story without interrupting, occasionally making small sounds of acknowledgement. "Okay," he said when I finished. "So here is the thing. Yes, HOAs can enforce their covenants, and yes, they can levy fines, but there are limits. In Colorado, fines have to be reasonable and proportional to the violation. $50 a day for snow accumulation is arguably excessive, especially since snow is temporary and not causing any actual damage or danger. Also, if your trampoline is not visible from public areas, they are going to have a hard time arguing it affects property values or community aesthetics. So what should I do? First, stop responding to Sharon directly. She is not interested in reason. Second, document everything. Take photos and videos showing where the trampoline is located and that it is not visible from the street. Get statements from your neighbors saying they have not complained. Third, send one final letter to the entire board, not just Sharon, stating that you believe the fines are unreasonable and excessive, and that you will be challenging them through the formal dispute process outlined in your covenants. There should be a process for that. I pulled out my copy of the covenants and flipped through until I found it. Sure enough, there was a section on dispute resolution that I had completely overlooked. Any homeowner who disagreed with a fine or violation notice could request a hearing before the full board, and the board was required to grant that hearing within 30 days. Found it, I said. Good. Request that hearing in writing and do it today. That will stop the fines from accumulating further until the hearing takes place. In the meantime, honestly, I would just let your kids keep playing on the trampoline. You are already in for $500, and it is not going to get worse once you request the hearing. And if they rule against me at the hearing, then we look at whether their decision is legally defensible. If it is not, we file a lawsuit, but I do not think it will get that far. Most HOA boards back down when someone actually challenges them instead of just rolling over. I thanked him profusely and immediately drafted my formal hearing request. I cited the specific section of the covenants, requested a hearing at the earliest available date, and stated clearly that I believed the fines were excessive, unreasonable, and not supported by any actual harm or complaint. I sent it by email and dropped a hard copy in the mail to make sure there was no question about when they received it. That night, the kids made a detailed plan for what they called Trampoline Snow Olympics for the weekend. Emma drew up score sheets and event categories. Highest jump, best snow explosion, longest time bouncing without stopping, and most creative snow angel made on the trampoline surface. Lucas invited half his class. I texted the parents to make sure it was okay, and every single one of them said yes and thanked me for organizing something fun. Friday afternoon, our backyard was full of kids ranging from age 6 to 12, all taking turns on the trampoline and having the time of their lives. I set up a table with hot chocolate and cookies, and several parents stayed to watch and chat. The whole thing turned into an impromptu neighborhood gathering. "This is the most fun our street has had all winter," one dad told me. "Usually everyone just stays inside." I was pouring hot chocolate when I noticed Sharon Fletcher standing at the edge of my property, her phone out, taking photos. She was not even trying to be subtle about it. I walked over to her. "Can I help you with something, Sharon?" "Documenting ongoing violations," she said without looking at me. "And now you've got a safety issue too with all these children using unsafe equipment. The trampoline is perfectly safe, and all the parents are here supervising," I said. "But I am glad you stopped by." "I submitted my request for a hearing yesterday. You should have received it." That made her look at me. "A hearing is not going to change anything. You are still in violation." "Then I guess we will let the full board decide that." She took a few more photos and then left without another word. I watched her car disappear around the corner and felt my jaw clench. This woman had nothing better to do with her time than harass me about snow. The weekend passed in a blur of kids, snow, and laughter. By Sunday evening, the trampoline looked like it had been thoroughly conquered. The snow was packed down in strange patterns. There were snow angels impressed into the surface, and someone had built a tiny snowman on the edge. It was a beautiful disaster, and my kids were already begging for more snow so they could do it all again. Monday brought the official response to my hearing request. The hearing was scheduled for January 22nd at 7 in the evening at the community center. That gave me a week to prepare. The email also informed me that the fines were suspended pending the outcome of the hearing, which was a relief. I was still on the hook for the $500 already assessed, but at least it was not climbing anymore. I spent the week preparing like I was going to trial. I took photos from every angle showing that the trampoline was not visible from the street or from any neighbor's front windows. I got written statements from both my immediate neighbors saying they had no issue with the trampoline and had never complained. I documented the kids playing on it, showing that it was being actively used and enjoyed. I researched Colorado winters and snow accumulation patterns to show that what we were experiencing was completely normal. I even found a physics article about how snow changes the dynamics of trampoline jumping, which I thought might be interesting even if it was not directly relevant. Nina flew home on Wednesday, and I showed her everything I had prepared. She read through it all carefully, then looked up at me with a serious expression. "This is really good, but you are missing something." "What?" The emotional argument. "Yes, you have all the legal and logical stuff, but you need to remind them that there are actual kids involved here, kids who found a way to have fun outside during winter. Kids who are getting exercise and fresh air and making memories. That matters too." She was right. I added a section to my opening statement about how the trampoline had become a gathering spot for neighborhood children, how parents had thanked us for organizing activities, and how this was exactly the kind of community building that an HOA should want to encourage, not punish. The night of the hearing, I dressed in business casual and brought 2 copies of everything I had prepared, one for me and one for the board. Nina came with me for moral support, and we arrived at the community center 15 minutes early. The meeting room was set up with a long table at the front for the board members and several rows of chairs for attendees. I was surprised to see about 20 other people already there, including several of the parents whose kids had been playing on our trampoline. Sharon Fletcher was already seated at the board table, looking severe in a black blazer. The other 4 board members filtered in over the next few minutes. Richard Hoffman was a silver-haired man in his 60s who looked tired. Patricia Chen was younger, maybe 40, and had a friendly face. Miguel Santos, who had emailed me earlier, gave me a small nod when he sat down. Karen Whitmore was exactly what I expected from her name. Blonde, middle-aged, with the kind of smile that did not quite reach her eyes. Sharon called the meeting to order at exactly 7. There were a few minor items on the agenda first, some discussions about landscaping contracts and pool maintenance for the upcoming summer. Then she got to my item. Next, we have a dispute filed by Oliver Morrison regarding fines assessed for covenant violations. "Mr. Morrison, you have 15 minutes to present your case." I stood up and walked to the front of the room, trying to ignore the way my hands wanted to shake. I distributed my documentation packet to each board member and then began. "Thank you for hearing me tonight. 3 weeks ago, I received a violation notice for having snow on my backyard trampoline. Since then, I have been fined $500, and I was threatened with daily fines of $50 until I corrected this supposed violation. I am here tonight to explain why these fines are unreasonable, excessive, and contrary to the spirit of our community." I walked them through everything. The location of the trampoline, the fact that it was not visible from public areas, the lack of any actual neighbor complaints, and the natural and temporary nature of snow accumulation. I cited the specific covenant sections that Sharon claimed I was violating and explained why I believed they did not apply to this situation. Then, I moved to the emotional argument. What Sharon's violation notices do not mention is that this snow-covered trampoline became the most popular spot in our neighborhood for kids this January. My children discovered that jumping on snow creates this amazing effect, and they wanted to share it with their friends. Over the past 2 weeks, I have had more than 30 children come through my backyard, all of them playing safely under parent supervision, all of them having an incredible time. Parents have thanked me for giving their kids a reason to go outside in winter. This is community building at its best, and instead of encouraging it, the HOA has tried to fine it out of existence. I saw Patricia Chen nodding slightly. Miguel looked sympathetic. Richard was reading through my documentation. Karen Whitmore had her arms crossed. Sharon's expression had not changed. In conclusion, I said, I am asking the board to drop these fines entirely and to clarify that natural snow accumulation on backyard equipment does not constitute a covenant violation. Thank you for your time. I sat down, and Nina squeezed my hand. Sharon immediately spoke up. Mr. Morrison's presentation is very nice, but it does not change the facts. The covenants state clearly that all outdoor equipment must be maintained in good condition. A snow-covered trampoline is not being maintained. Is the trampoline damaged? Patricia Chen asked. Sharon hesitated. That is not the point. I think it is exactly the point, Patricia said. If the equipment is not damaged and is still being used safely, then how is it not being maintained? Snow melts. It is temporary. The aesthetic standard, Sharon insisted. Our property values depend on every home maintaining high standards. Nobody can even see it from the street, Miguel pointed out. I drove by Oliver's house before coming here tonight. You cannot see the backyard at all from the front. I could see it, Sharon said. How? I asked. Where were you standing? She did not answer immediately, and I suddenly understood. You walked into the common area behind my house specifically to look into my backyard, did not you? That is the only way to see it. I was doing my rounds as HOA president. Walking through common areas looking for violations in people's backyards is not doing rounds, it is surveillance, I said, my voice rising despite my attempt to stay calm. That is invasive and inappropriate. Order, Richard Hoffman said, speaking for the first time. His voice was quiet but firm. Let's keep this civil. Sharon, I have to say, I am troubled by this situation. The fines do seem excessive for what amounts to snow on a trampoline. And if Oliver is correct that you cannot see it from the street, then I am not sure what aesthetic standard we are protecting. We have to enforce the covenants uniformly, Sharon argued. If we let this go, then everyone will start letting their properties deteriorate. With all due respect, one of the parents in the audience spoke up. Letting your kids play in the snow is not property deterioration. It is called childhood. Several people laughed. Sharon's face flushed red. This is not a public comment period. Actually, Richard said, checking his papers, the rules do allow for public comment on dispute hearings. Go ahead, madam. The mother stood up. I am Jennifer Garcia, and my 2 sons have been playing on the Morrison's trampoline for the past 2 weeks. It has been the highlight of their winter. Oliver has been incredibly generous with his time and his property, and he has made our neighborhood a better place for kids. Fining him for that is absurd. 3 other parents spoke up with similar comments. Then Mrs. Patterson, Emma's teacher, raised her hand. I am not a resident of this neighborhood, but I am a teacher, and I use the snow trampoline situation as a teaching tool in my classroom. It was a great example of creative play and physics in action. My students wrote essays about it. This is the kind of thing we should be celebrating, not punishing. Sharon tried to regain control. This is all very heartwarming, but we have rules for a reason. Mr. Morrison agreed to follow those rules when he bought his property. Rules should serve the community, not stifle it. Patricia Chen said. I move that we dismiss all fines against Mr. Morrison and issue a clarification that natural weather-related conditions on backyard equipment do not constitute covenant violations. Second, Miguel Santos said immediately. Sharon looked furious. This sets a terrible precedent. I disagree, Richard said. I think it sets exactly the right precedent. It says we use common sense and we do not harass homeowners over nonsense. All in favor of Patricia's motion. Patricia, Miguel, and Richard all raised their hands. Karen Whitmore kept her arms crossed and voted no. Sharon did not even vote, just glared at the other board members. Motion passes 4-1 with the president abstaining, Richard said. Mr. Morrison, your fines are dismissed. The board apologizes for any inconvenience. I felt Nina's hand grip mine hard and I realized I had been holding my breath. Thank you, I managed to say. The meeting moved on to other business, but I barely heard any of it. We had won. The fines were gone, and Sharon's power trip had been shut down by her own board members. As soon as the meeting adjourned, several people came up to shake my hand and congratulate me. Sharon left immediately without speaking to anyone. Karen Whitmore followed her out, but Patricia Chen stopped to talk to me on her way out. I am sorry you had to go through all this, she said. Sharon means well, but she sometimes loses perspective on what actually matters. Your kids should absolutely keep playing on that trampoline. Thank you for speaking up, I said. Thank you for fighting back, she replied. Too many people just pay the fines and resent the HOA. We need to remember that we are here to serve the community, not rule it. That night, Nina and I celebrated with ice cream and told the kids the good news. Emma immediately started planning the next trampoline snow Olympics. Lucas asked if we could invite even more kids this time. As many as want to come, I said, though we might need more hot chocolate. The next morning, a Saturday, we woke up to a fresh 4 inches of snow. Emma and Lucas were ecstatic. By 9 in the morning, there were already 6 kids in our backyard, jumping on the trampoline and creating snow explosions. By noon, that number had doubled. Word had spread not just through the kids but through their parents, and our house had become the unofficial winter activity center for Ridgemont Pines. I was outside supervising and taking my turn shoveling the driveway when I noticed a police car pull up in front of my house. My stomach dropped. Had Sharon called the cops? Was that even possible? A young officer got out and walked up my driveway. Oliver Morrison. That's me. Is there a problem, officer? He looked past me at the backyard full of laughing children. I got a call about a possible safety violation, unsupervised children on dangerous equipment. But it looks like there are about 4 adults back there watching them, and everyone seems to be having fun. Someone called the police. I could not keep the disbelief out of my voice. It happens sometimes. People call us for all kinds of things that are not actually police matters, he smiled. Your kids are fine. Everyone is fine. Have a good day, sir. He left, and I stood there in my driveway feeling my anger build. Sharon had called the police because she lost at the HOA meeting. This was retaliation, pure and simple. I pulled out my phone and started to text Miguel Santos, then stopped. Maybe it was better to just let it go. The cop had seen that nothing was wrong and Sharon had made herself look foolish. But apparently she was not done. On Monday, I received a letter from a lawyer representing the HOA. It informed me that while the fines for the trampoline snow had been dismissed, the board had identified multiple other violations on my property and would be conducting a full inspection. The letter listed things like possible fence height discrepancies, potential paint color variations from approved palette, and unverified drainage solutions. They were going to nickel and dime me to death because I had dared to challenge them. I called James Patterson again, and this time his tone was much more serious. This is harassment. Sharon is abusing her position, and the HOA attorney should know better than to send a letter like this. Do you want to fight this? What are my options? You can file a lawsuit against Sharon personally and the HOA as an entity for harassment. You can also report her conduct to the Colorado HOA Oversight Board. Or you can try to get her removed from the board by rallying other homeowners. Any of those options will take time and energy. I thought about it. I had already spent weeks dealing with this nonsense, and now I was looking at potentially months more. But the alternative was to live under Sharon's thumb, constantly waiting for the next violation notice, the next fine, the next harassment. Let's do all three, I said. File the lawsuit, make the report, and I'll start talking to neighbors about recalling her from the board. Nina agreed when I told her that night. That woman is not going to stop unless someone makes her stop, and think about the next person she targets. If we do not stand up to her, she will just keep doing this. Over the next week, I became intimately familiar with HOA law in Colorado. I learned that board members could be removed through a recall vote if enough homeowners signed a petition. I learned that HOA board members could be held personally liable for harassment if their actions were found to be outside the scope of their duties. I learned that Colorado had recently passed new laws strengthening homeowner rights and limiting HOA powers. I also started talking to neighbors. I went door to door on my street and the surrounding streets, introducing myself and explaining what had happened. Almost everyone had a Sharon Fletcher story. The bird feeder incident I had heard about before. A family who had been fined for having the wrong color Christmas lights. Someone who got a violation notice for their grass being a 1/4 inch too long. A homeowner who was told their vegetable garden violated aesthetic standards and had to be removed. One man, Frank Doyle, who lived 2 streets over, became my ally in all this. He was retired military, no nonsense, and absolutely fed up with Sharon's leadership. I have been saying for 2 years that someone needs to challenge her, he told me. But nobody wants to deal with the hassle. I am glad you are doing this. Together, Frank and I drafted a recall petition. Colorado law required signatures from 20% of homeowners to trigger a recall vote. Ridgemont Pines had 240 homes, which meant we needed 48 signatures. We got 73 in less than a week. Sharon must have found out what we were doing because I received a personal email from her on Wednesday evening. The subject line was unnecessary hostility, and the message was a bizarre mix of accusatory and self-pitying. She wrote that she had only ever tried to maintain property values and keep the neighborhood nice, that she volunteered countless hours with no compensation, and that I was ungrateful and vindictive. She ended with a thinly veiled threat. You may win some battles, but I have been on this board for 6 years. I know every rule and every loophole. This will not end well for you. I forwarded the email to James Patterson. His response was immediate. Do not reply to her. This is evidence of her state of mind and her retaliatory intent. Save everything. The recall vote was scheduled for February 15th, about a month from when this whole ordeal started. In the meantime, James filed the lawsuit, and we submitted our complaint to the State Oversight Board. The Oversight Board responded within a week, saying they would be opening an investigation into Sharon Fletcher's conduct and the HOA's fine practices. Things escalated fast after that. Sharon apparently panicked when she learned about the investigation. She sent out an email to all homeowners claiming that I was trying to destroy the HOA and that, without proper covenant enforcement, property values would plummet. She called me a troublemaker and accused me of putting children in danger with my reckless disregard for safety standards. That was a mistake. Multiple parents who had been at the Trampoline Snow Olympics responded with their own emails defending me and criticizing Sharon. The neighborhood email list, which was normally used for lost pet notifications and yard sale announcements, turned into a war zone. People took sides. Arguments broke out. Karen Whitmore tried to defend Sharon and got shouted down. Richard Hoffman sent a message asking everyone to please calm down and wait for the recall vote. Through all of this, my kids kept playing on the trampoline. We got another snowstorm in early February, and the Snow Olympics became a weekly event. Kids from outside our neighborhood started showing up. One Saturday, we had over 40 children rotating through the backyard. I had to institute a number system just to keep track of turns. A local news station got wind of the story somehow, probably from one of the parents who worked in media. A reporter named Ashley Tran called me and asked if she could do a story about the HOA trampoline controversy. I hesitated, not wanting to turn this into a media circus, but James Patterson encouraged it. "Public pressure is your friend right now," he said. "The more people know what Sharon did, the harder it is for her to claim she was just doing her job." The news story aired on February 10th, 5 days before the recall vote. It was a 2-minute segment on the evening news that interviewed me, showed footage of kids playing on the trampoline, and included a clip of Jennifer Garcia talking about community building. They tried to get Sharon to comment, but she refused. The reporter ended the piece by noting that a recall vote was coming up and that the state was investigating the HOA's practices. The story went mildly viral locally. By the next day, I had received messages of support from people all over Colorado who had their own HOA horror stories. A state representative even tweeted about it, saying it was a perfect example of why Colorado needed stronger homeowner protections. Sharon sent me another email, this one just 2 words. "Are you satisfied?" I did not respond. The recall vote was held on a Tuesday evening, again at the community center. The turnout was massive. Nearly every homeowner in Ridgemont Pines showed up, either in person or by proxy. The room was packed, and there was an energy in the air that felt both exciting and slightly dangerous. The vote was by secret ballot. Richard Hoffman, as vice president, oversaw the process since Sharon could not preside over her own recall hearing. People filed past the ballot box, dropped their votes, and then waited in tense silence while volunteers counted. It was not even close. Sharon Fletcher was recalled by a vote of 187 to 29. Nearly 90% of voting homeowners wanted her gone. She stood up, her face pale and tight, and walked out without a word. Karen Whitmore followed her again, though she had not been recalled. The room erupted in applause and conversation. Richard called for order and then addressed the room. "The board will appoint an interim president until the next scheduled election. We will also be reviewing all of our fine and enforcement policies to make sure they are reasonable and applied fairly. Thank you all for participating in this democratic process." People lined up to shake my hand. Frank Doyle clapped me on the back hard enough to make me stumble. "We did it, kid. We actually did it." Nina was grinning. "You became a community organizer over a trampoline." "The power of snow," I said, and she laughed. The State Oversight Board finished their investigation in early March. Their report was scathing. They found that Sharon had been issuing fines at nearly triple the rate of comparable HOAs, that many of her violations were for minor or subjective issues, and that she had failed to follow proper procedures in several cases, including mine. They imposed a fine on the HOA itself, and required them to implement new training and oversight procedures for board members. The lawsuit James filed was settled out of court. The HOA agreed to pay my attorney fees and issue a formal apology. Sharon Fletcher personally was not held liable because technically she had been acting in her capacity as board president, even if she had been doing so badly. But the settlement included a provision that she could never serve on the Ridgemont Pines HOA board again. By the time spring arrived and the snow finally melted completely off the trampoline, the whole ordeal felt like a strange dream. The trampoline itself looked no worse for wear, just a bit faded from the sun and weather. Emma and Lucas went back to normal jumping, and while it was still fun, they both agreed that the snow had made it magical. The new HOA board president was Patricia Chen, who immediately set about reforming the way violations were handled. She instituted a common-sense review process and scaled back fines dramatically. The neighborhood felt different, more relaxed. People were not constantly worried about getting violation notices for minor things. I ran into Sharon Fletcher exactly once after everything was over. It was at the grocery store in late April. We made eye contact across the produce section, and for a moment I thought she might say something. But she just turned and walked away, her cart squeaking slightly as she went. Frank Doyle later told me that Sharon and her husband were selling their house and moving to a neighborhood without an HOA. Turns out she hates HOAs too, he said. She just wanted to be the one in charge of hating them. That summer, the Ridgemont Pines community had its annual pool party and barbecue. It was the first one since we had moved in that I actually wanted to attend. Kids were everywhere, swimming and playing games. Parents were chatting and laughing. Patricia Chen made a speech about community and cooperation, and how the HOA was there to serve residents, not control them. Emma and Lucas spent most of the party in the pool, but at one point Emma came up to me, dripping wet. "Dad, remember the snow trampoline?" Of course I remember. That was only a few months ago. Can we do it again next winter? And invite everyone again? I looked around at the community we had helped change, at the neighbors who had become friends, at the kids who had found joy in something as simple as snow and a trampoline. Absolutely. We will make it even bigger. She grinned and ran back to the pool, and I felt Nina slip her hand into mine. "You know what is funny?" she said. "When we moved here, you said you just wanted a quiet place to raise the kids." I did say that. "And instead you started a revolution over a trampoline." "I did not start anything," I protested. "Sharon started it by being unreasonable, and you finished it by being stubborn," Nina said. "I am proud of you. The kids are proud of you. The whole neighborhood is proud of you." I just wanted them to let my kids play in the snow. Sometimes that is how revolutions start. Someone just wants something small and reasonable, and when someone tries to stop them, they realize they have to fight. I thought about that as the party continued around us. She was right. I had not set out to change anything. I just wanted my kids to be able to jump on a snow-covered trampoline in their own backyard without being harassed. But that one small stand had rippled outward, changing the HOA, changing the neighborhood, changing how people thought about rules and community and common sense. The next winter brought even more snow than the previous one. True to our word, Emma and Lucas and I organized what we called the first annual Ridgemont Pines Snow Trampoline Festival. We invited the whole neighborhood, and over 100 people showed up. We had hot chocolate stations, a warming tent, organized jumping competitions, and even a local radio station came out to broadcast live. Patricia Chen, still HOA president, showed up with her family and made a speech about how this was exactly the kind of community event the HOA wanted to support. "Last year, we would have been fining Oliver for this," she said to laughter. This year we are celebrating it. That is progress. The festival became an annual tradition. Each year it got bigger, with more activities and more families. Kids who had jumped on our trampoline that first winter grew up and brought their younger siblings. Parents who had been strangers became close friends. The whole thing became part of the identity of Ridgemont Pines, the neighborhood where they did not just tolerate fun, they celebrated it. And every winter, when the first good snow fell, Emma and Lucas would run to the back window and watch it accumulate on the trampoline, waiting for it to get deep enough. And every winter, they would take the first jumps, sending up those magical clouds of sparkling snow, laughing with pure joy. All because an HOA president tried to fine me for snow on my trampoline, and I decided that some things were worth fighting for. Sometimes the smallest battles matter the most, because they are really about something bigger. The right to live your life without petty tyrants making it miserable, the right to let your kids be kids, and the right to say no when someone tries to enforce a stupid rule just because they can. Sharon Fletcher taught me that, though I doubt she meant to. She thought she could intimidate me into compliance, but instead she inspired me to stand up. And in the process, she lost everything she had worked to build while I gained a community. The trampoline is still in our backyard. It is getting old now, the springs less bouncy, the mat more faded. Emma is in high school and Lucas is in middle school, and they do not jump on it much anymore. But every winter when it snows, I look out the back window at that snow-covered trampoline and smile, remembering the winter that changed everything. And I never, not once, cleared the snow off it before the kids were done playing. Because that is what it means to be a parent and a homeowner and a member of a community. Knowing what really matters and having the courage to fight for it, even when someone with a clipboard and a bad attitude tells you that you are wrong. The snow trampoline taught my kids about physics and fun. It taught me about standing up to bullies and organizing communities. It taught our neighborhood about common sense and priorities. And it taught Sharon Fletcher, wherever she is now, that sometimes people fight back. Best $300 in disputed fines I never paid.